Okay.
Why do you always forget your glasses all day?
I don't know. I have them this time. I remembered them. You gotta move a little bit more that way so I can get to your back. There we go. Okay. Hades' daughter, chapter 9. Langarlia. Loth sat close by his father, his head bowed in respect. They were alone in the strange stone house that Geneviese's third foremother had caused to be built. Unlike most Langarlian houses, which were round with conical thatched roofs, this was a rectangular structure with a heavy, but admittedly completely weatherproof slate roof. It made Loth uncomfortable, as if the strangeness of the structure kept him a prisoner from the land he loved so much, and he rarely came in here. He couldn't understand why his father wanted to live here with Genovese. But then, Arnie was all too clearly approaching his ancient idleness. Genovese had him where she wanted, in her house, in her bed, and, like any defenseless infant, dependent on her breast for comfort, nurture, and safety. Tonight, however, Loth had ventured into the hated structure because he wanted to speak with his father alone, and he knew Genovese was meeting with Mother Maius at her house some way distant. Loth almost grinned at the thought. Mother Maius was one of his, and he doubted she'd be giving Genovese much more than the merest courtesies demanded of any host. Arnie patted his son's knee, happy to have him near for a change. "I am pleased you came, my son." Loth successfully fought the urge to roll his eyes, and merely nodded, as if this domestic harmony was what he too had craved all this time. "I needed to speak with you, father." "Genovese, I know what you want to say, Loth. No reason to speak it aloud. But I need to, father. I have strange doubts regarding Genovese. I distrust her, and yet cannot form the distrust into words. What she proposes, to bring a strange magic into Langarlia to conquer Og's weakness, is is oops, sorry, is necessary, Loth. You know that. What can I do? What can you do? Weak as we are, we still have some power left, some of Og's benefice. Surely what we have is a mere shadow of what once existed, Loth. I should know. I once commanded all of Og's power. Tell me, how long has it been since anyone has seen the stag run wild through the forests? Well, only last week Cole brought down a magnificent red stag. Arnie smiled. You know that is not what I meant. How long has it been since anyone has seen the stag? The white stag with the blood-red antlers. Og himself running free. Arnie gave Loth a long moment of silence, then spoke again, infinitely gently. The last time was the night of your conception, Loth. Running as if panicked through the forest in which I lay with the witch, Blangan. And he had good enough reason to fear, didn't he? Loth hung his head, hating himself for his own conception, hating his mother for what she had done. You have been the best of sons, Arnie said. I wish I was able to hand over to you Og's full power on my deathbed. Perhaps when you die, the power will be reunited in me.
Any flowers?
Nope. No, no, Loth. When I die, what I have will die with me. Og will be even more lessened. Genovese needs to bring in this magic for this land, if not for our peace of mind and pride. She needs to act now, for if we are both dead before she has completed her task, then this land will lie defenseless. Loth shook his head, desperate not to accept what his father was saying. I know what Genovese proposes makes sense. I know it in here, he tapped his deformed skull. But not in here, he tapped his chest. Every part of me hates it. That is your pride speaking, Loth. Loth raised his head and stared at his father with his beautiful green eyes. What if it is not my pride, father? What if it is the remaining part of Og within me that speaks? Oh, Loth. Both men jumped slightly, as if they were boys caught out of some mischief. They looked behind them. Genovese had come through the door, and had now paused just inside it, one hand resting on the doorframe. She looked breathless, as if she'd run all the way from Mother Mias's house, and also fearful, as if she'd come back to her home to discover the worst of the night's monsters cheerily settled within. Then she smiled, and dropped her hand from the doorframe, and walked slowly into the single large chamber of the house. The firelight from the central hearth reflected over her face and body, shadowing her eyes and shrouding her in a mysterious allure that had both men holding their breath. Arnie, she said, dropping gracefully down beside him, will you give me some space to speak with your son alone? Perhaps I can soothe his fears. Arnie returned her smile and nodded. I need to make obeisance to Og anyway. That is always best done outside, beneath the trees. Take a cloak, Genovese said, patting him on the hand as he rose and ignoring Loth's grimace at the somewhat patronizing action. The night has grown cold. She waited until Arnie had left. Then she moved her stool about the hearth, a little so that she sat close to Loth. You do not trust me, she said. No. Then perhaps I can give you a reason to trust me. He was silent, studying her face. I have a twin purpose in bringing to Langarlia the strange male. She paused fractionally, giving her next word added weight. Potency. This man who can replace with his magic what Langarlia has lost with Og's failing. True, he will bring with him a new magic, something which can be used to combine with Mag's power to revive this land. But he can also bring with him something else. She paused, a smile playing about her mouth, the firelight sparkling brilliantly in her eyes. He will also bring with him Blangen, your mother. The Dark Witch? Loth was stunned. His mother, Blangen, had fled a few days after she'd given him birth. No one had ever seen her again. My mother? He said the word with hatred. Now Genovese did smile, pleased with his reaction. Aye, he will return Blangen to Langarlia. Loth was silent, his face introspective, thinking over the myriad implications of his dark witch mother's return. Loth, Genovese said slowly, leaning forward and placing a hand lightly on his leg. There is a possibility, a faint possibility, that if Blangen is destroyed, then so also may be destroyed the dark craft that she cast over your father. If she dies, then perhaps Og will revive, and we will not need the magic of this stranger. What are you saying? Loth was very aware of Genovese's hand on his thigh, the warmth of it, the very slight weight of it, and he was dismayed at how easily his body responded to her. Her hand moved much closer to his groin, one of her fingers straying tantalizingly under the edge of his hip wrap, stroking, its nail teasing. Loth knew very well what Genovese was doing, with both her words and her hand, but he was almost powerless to resist it. What she was offering was, he drew in a ragged breath, was what he had always wanted. Power. If you take revenge on the Dark Witch, your mother, Genovese said very softly, her eyes holding Loth's, her hand now sliding completely beneath his wrap, then perhaps Og's power may be revived in you, his avenger. He couldn't look away from her, and while one part of his mind screamed at him to brush aside her hand, stand and leave, The rest of his mind was utterly seduced by the possibilities suggested by word and hand. And if that is the case, Genovesa continued, her voice still very low, her hand stroking very gently, her face, her mouth, very close to his, then what need will I, in this land, have of this strange man and his strange magic? Og will be resurgent again, in you, and then you and I. You and I. There was barely a coherent thought left in Loth's mind at this point, but he clung to it grimly. And if you have no need for this strange man, if all you need is for me to take revenge on Bling and to break the dark craft which binds Og, why bring him here in the first instance? Because I need him to bring us Blangen, and because you might fail. Blangen may be too strong for you. If you fail, then I will need him to... I will not fail. She only smiled and increased the pressure of her hand. Loth closed his eyes, fought for some control, and managed to find it. Why not my father? Why not tell Arnie this? Why not send him to? Arnie is an old man, weak. Langen bested him once before. Neither you, nor I, nor this land can afford for it to happen again. You must do this, Loth. I need a strong man, Loth. There was infinite promise in the manner she said need. Not your father. Never your father. She leaned forward and kissed him, and that was the final weapon that shattered the resistance both of Loth's mind and of his body. He shuddered under her hand and sighed, then nodded. You spoke with Loth? They were in her bed now, sweaty and relaxed from sex. Aye, Genovesa pushed her body even tighter against Arnie's. He has come about to my plan. My dear. Arnie's hand stroked her shoulder, as if apologizing for what he was about to say. I accept that you need this man to counter Og's weakness, but will you perhaps confide in me what he will do? How it is that his magic will protect this land? Genovesa lay silent for a while, thinking over what she should tell Arnie. Eventually, as Arnie waited patiently, she decided that a little of the truth might not hurt too much. This man, Brutus, controls part of what is called the game. The game? Aye. You know that my fifth forefather was not of this land. Aye. Arnie smiled and moved his hand to Genovese's luxuriant black hair. Thus these dark curls of yours. She came from a land in the southern waters of a sea called the Aegean. In her world, in this Aegean world, the great men of power used something called the game to protect their lands. When my fifth foremother came to this land, she truly became as Langarlians, but she remembered what she knew of the game, and taught it to her daughter, as her daughter passed it on to her daughter, and thus to me. Arnie felt a flicker of unease. Do you mean that all of the Megalons, from the time of your fifth foremother to you, have secret knowledge of power other than that of Madge and Og? Displeased, Genovesa propped herself up on her pillow, up on her elbow. Indeed, she said, and what a good thing, too. Otherwise, this land would face certain ruin. Arnie laughed softly, apologetically. Of course, Genovesa, forgive me. She lay down again, nestling her breasts against his chest. Please, Arnie said, fighting down his arousal, tell me more of this game. Genovesa shrugged, as if the subject was now of disinterest to her. It is a powerful spell weaving which uses both male and female power to protect a land against all evil set against it. There are very few left who know how to manipulate the game, who know how to use it. 2 people, in fact. Myself And this man I have summoned to us, this kingman, and one who will want to destroy it, she thought. But Asterion is far away, and no threat. Once many people within the Aegean world knew how to play the game, Genovesa continued, but over past generations the knowledge has died, as of the people who had access to the game's secrets. This man, this Brutus, is the only kingman left, and thus his usefulness to us, my love. For if we use him to build the spell weaving here, then there will be no one who can subsequently undo it. Our land will remain forever protected, while all others about it will fall victim to plagues and disasters. And where is this Brutus from? What manner of a man is he? He is a proud man, and a courageous and skilful warrior, both requisites for a truly great kingman. His bloodline comes from a city called Troy, now destroyed, and so thus the game that he knows is the Troy game. In that we are lucky, for the Troy game was one of the most powerful of all the games about the Aegean. So we shall use the Troy game to protect this land, my love. Arnie shrank away from her wandering hand, concerned. I have heard of this Troy from the traders who come to buy our copper and tin. Troy was attacked and ravaged, as you say. What manner of protection is this Troy game, then, if Troy itself lies destroyed? Genovesa sighed. Have you not been listening to me, old man? Troy was destroyed many generations ago. Brutus' line has been wandering, seeking a home ever since. Then there were many kingmen, many men who knew how to manipulate the game, and who knew how to unravel the spell weaving that protected any given land or city. Troy's game was unraveled by a man called Achilles, who knew the means by which to dispel the magical protection that hung about Troy. But Achilles is long dead, as is his line. Every other Aegean kingsman and their line are dead, save for the Trojan king line. This Brutus is the only man left who can weave the enchantments needed to resurrect the game. The only one. There is no one who can unravel the game. This Brutus and I will build to protect Mangarlia. No one. No one, she repeated in her mind, and smiled at the thought of useless, feeble Asterion raging far beyond the peaks of the great Himalayas. The instant I close the game with Brutus, Asterion will be trapped. There's no need to worry about Asterion. No need at all. In his distant alpine valley, deep within the dark heart of his roughly drawn labyrinth, Asterion lowered his head and smiled. Power throbbed about him, so virulent it had devastated the entire valley of all life. One day, whispered Asterion, he would fling that power at Genovesa and all her hopes and plans and ambitions. Meanwhile, all he had to do was sit and observe. Thus ends Chapter 9. Till next time.